The Stanford Prison Experiment. In 1971, Stanford psychology professor Philip Zimbardo wanted to study how having power could change behavior. To pull this off, he turned the basement of the university into a makeshift prison. 24 students signed up. Half became guards and the rest prisoners. They each received materials. The guards got uniforms and sunglasses, and the prisoners got ID numbers and outfits. Within the first day, the guards started acting like actual prison officers. Eventually, they yelled, gave orders, and made up punishments. And although the prisoners followed orders at first, things began to get tense. By day 2, some prisoners rebelled. Guards fought back with psychological tricks, taking away beds, making prisoners do push-ups, and locking them in closets. Zimbardo was supposed to be the scientist watching the study, but he got too into his role as warden. Still, he didn't stop it. One student had a breakdown and had to leave. Others begged to quit, and what was supposed to last 2 weeks ended after 6 days. The experiment showed how quickly power can turn decent people into bullies, and how easy it is to lose sight of what's real when you start playing roles. The Milgram Obedience Study. In 1961, Stanley Milgram, a psychologist at Yale University, was asking a question that came out of World War II. Why do people follow orders that hurt others? So he designed a simple setup. A volunteer sat in front of a large machine covered in switches labeled from mild to severe shock, and in another room sat a man hooked up to wires, an actor pretending to be a learner. The volunteer was told to deliver a shock every time the learner got a question wrong. With each mistake, the voltage increased. The learner yelled, begged to stop, and then went silent. The researcher in the lab coat simply and calmly said, "The experiment requires that you continue." And they did. 2/3 of participants went all the way to the highest setting, believing they might have killed someone, simply because someone with authority told them to. There were no threats, no force, just obedience. The study showed how people are fine with hurting others when responsibility seems to belong to someone else. The Little Albert Experiment. In 1920, 2 psychologists, John Watson and his assistant Rosalie Rayner, wanted to see if fear could be learned. Their subject was a 9-month-old baby known as Little Albert. At first, Albert was curious and calm. He played with a white rat, a rabbit, and even a dog. Then the experiment began. Every time Albert reached for the rat, Watson hit a metal bar behind him with a hammer, producing a loud bang that terrified him. After a few rounds, Albert began crying as soon as he saw the rat, even when there was no noise. Then the fear spread. He cried at the sight of rabbits, fur coats, and even Santa Claus beards. Anything soft or white sent him into a panic. Watson had proven that fear could be conditioned, but he never reversed it. The baby left the study still terrified of things that reminded him of that rat. No one knows exactly what happened to little Albert afterward, and the experiment is considered one of the most unethical to this day. The Well of Despair. In the early 1960s, Harry Harlow, a psychologist famous for a previous experiment that showed baby monkeys prefer a cloth mother over a wire one, conducted an experiment to meddle with the basic psychological needs we depend on. He constructed a device called the Well of Despair. It was a tall metal box with solid walls and no light. Inside, he placed baby monkeys, completely alone for weeks or months. At first, they screamed and clung to themselves. Then they stopped moving. Some just stared into the corner, frozen. When Harlow finally took them out, they didn't know how to interact. They avoided other monkeys, refused to play, and some even hurt themselves. The ones that became mothers ignored their own babies or treated them roughly. Harlow said he wanted to understand depression. He succeeded, but at a terrible cost. The lesson was heartbreaking but clear. Affection, love, and touch aren't luxuries. They're what keep living beings sane. Project MK Ultra. While psychologists were exploring behavior, the CIA was exploring control. During the Cold War, they launched Project MK Ultra, a top-secret program designed to test mind control, hypnosis, and truth serums. They used LSD as their favorite tool. Agents dosed soldiers, prisoners, psychiatric patients, and random civilians, often without warning. Some were kept drugged for days, monitored like lab rats. Others were placed in safe houses, interrogated while hallucinating, or exposed to sound and light experiments, used in an attempt to break the mind. One scientist, Frank Olson, was secretly given LSD at a work retreat and died after falling from a hotel window. The CIA called it suicide. Many weren't convinced. When journalists exposed MK Ultra in the 1970s, the CIA destroyed most of its records. However, some documents survived, and for a while painted the CIA as an evil organization with unchecked power.